Hello and welcome everyone to this week's Collective Imagination Show with Barbara Carnes in New York and myself,
Hello.
Lisa Harrison, here in Australia. And yesterday we had an awesome conversation around levity, yesterday on the One People Show. And it was a kind of convoluted and a little bit confused. However, I think most people walked away at the end of yesterday with a reasonable understanding of what it is and why it is, and potentially why it was wiped from the scientific literature. And it's one of those things, I've been playing with this and we're kind of working with this for several months now. And there is a shift in consciousness, I feel, that goes with it when you step into this concept of levity. It's expansive. And I just wanted to explore that a little bit more today and potentially do our little collective doing around levity. So
Love it.
You got introduced to this concept yesterday, Barbara. So what did you walk away with?
Actually, I thought it was a lot clearer than you guys thought you were portraying it as. Oops. I got the concept of it's gravity being pulling in and condensing and levity being its opposite. I also recognize that if we are allowing gravity to rule our life and accept it as the norm in reality, then we will be more confined to the 3D existence that we're in. But when you were talking, I just thought, okay, well then I choose levity. I instantly felt an expansion. It's a completely different point of view, perspective. And I like it because it allows you to just continue outward and be attracted to and attract things that are beyond and further and further and further. And so that's in essence what I got out of it. And I also understood why the scientific element comes into play and why they would try to get us to poo-poo it and see it as just silliness and what children and grannies think about, and not something to put some real weight behind and thought behind and something worth pursuing, because it is it's empowering.
Like they say that the universe is expanding, it's in this constant state of expansion. But if at the core of every planet, or if the overriding force is gravity that's pulling and the gravitational fields, then how is it constantly in a state of expansion if everything's always pulling things around it to itself? There has to be a balancing energy out there, otherwise everything just comes together in a big colliding mess. I mean, maybe
Exactly.
That's a really simple view and I'm missing some major scientific concepts, I don't know, but there has to be an equal and opposite force, or something that is potentially even stronger to allow the expansion of the universe.
I'm fully on board.
Yeah. Just to read some of the comments in the chat room that are happening, I saw an immediate correlation with the so-called non-physical aspects of humanity as well. Speaking of the concept of levity as presented yesterday, kind of like that saying of as without, so within. There is no gravity, the earth just sucks. It's almost like the story of the wayshower that lifts up and permeates the darkness, the ones that get to graduate from this place. The definition of gravity is seriousness, so perhaps from Sirius, or Sirius, not sure. Yeah, so if anybody wants to come out and share their thoughts on their experience yesterday and on around this discussion, by all means do. Penny, you unmuted for a second. Were you planning on coming out?
I just logged in.
Oh, okay. Well, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's been an ongoing conversation and ongoing research here in this house, and something that trying to understand why it was taken out of science, why the word was relegated to what it's been relegated to, and the idea of the observer consciousness, or the what do they call it? Self-observation mode. Now, was it taken out because it was seen that humanity was going into the self-observation mode and that it would just cause us problems? Or was it taken out in order to kind of guide us into this self-observation mode? Chicken or the egg?
I actually saw it as being relegated to where it is today and taken out of science because of the empowerment aspect, because of the what it would allow us to consider, the possibilities that would expand exponentially due to it. And of course it would take time, but back then they didn't have the across the world communications they have today, but it furthered their agenda by removing it, just like making science limited to everything except spirituality. Anything that's of I want to say of God, but because I can't think of another way to put it. What was that, like the 1500s or something like that, where the church actually came in and said, science is great, but it's limited to these things. You can't go beyond these things. And I think that's probably about the same time it came into play.
Well, that's the other thing we talked about yesterday, and even Dee and I have been on it again this morning. She's sitting over there on her computer digging away at the history. And
which is fucked.
That was gravity.
That was gravity. The thing that we are finding, and we're finding correlation for over and over again, because I've been playing with this at least for a year. I remember when we did it was around that time frame of doing, when we had Sasha Stone on the One People show over a year ago, like February, March of last year. It was that time frame that I was putting out this whole idea of 100-year cycles, and I think they've added at least 1,000 years to the last couple of thousand. If just looking at some of the things, I'm going to throw this out there, right? Because this is what Dee and I have been playing with this morning. Where's my little notepad? Can't see any of that because it's too glary. This is our scribbling notes from this morning.
It's linear.
It's linear, but get a load of this. Let's just take the last 2,000 years from zero to now, supposedly. There's evidence to suggest that Christ was actually born in 1056, not zero. That they pretty much made up that first 1,000 years. All right, so throw that out. Just throw that out. That leaves us with 1,000. Between the 5th, what they call the 5th century, to the 10th was the early Middle Ages. 11 to 13 was the Middle Ages. 11 to 13, 14 to 15 was the late Middle Ages. Inside of that, the 6th to the 14th is the Dark Ages. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that the Dark Ages didn't exist at all. Right? So there's 800 years you can throw out. And that would change the birth date of Christ as well, if you throw out that Dark Ages area. Everything that we are looking at between, say, the 1500s, what's being called the 1500s and the 1700s, is when everything changed and all of this got written, all of it. And it's in that time frame where they introduced the globe. It's the time, and there's even stuff to suggest that the Vatican wasn't really created until what year?
Oh God, I can't.
It was only a few hundred years ago, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing got written and created 300 or 400 years ago. There's plenty of evidence to suggest that all of these so-called eras and epochs and civilizations that happened in a linear fashion actually happened all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
That what we had was a global civilization. There was no real borders. There was no war. That we were peaceful. We traded with one another. That our architecture, our technology, our spiritual understanding, all of this was highly, highly advanced. And it was only a stone throw ago. And we think of, when you look at the Egyptian culture, there's lots of evidence again to suggest that they've extended that by thousands of years. Thousands, 10 or even 12,000 years. And that, what does it do to us? And that there was no slave. This whole slave master thing.
What was that? You went robo.
The whole slave master concept, that we've always lived with these domineering empires, that we've always lived in a state of slave and master to somebody, that that it's all bullshit, and it's all really been just the last few hundred years. I remember having this conversation, I don't know which show it was on, but it was a while back, that if all of that history of us being warmongering, conquering species was not true, if in fact we were peaceful and peace-loving, you could never have gotten people to participate in World War I, for example. You couldn't have, because no one would want to be the first person, no nation would want to be the first nation to have broken that history. If that's what we thought our history was, if we knew that we've always been peaceful, peace-loving, cooperative, to get a people with that psyche to actually break that and start going out and killing each other, it would have taken a hell of a lot more. But if you believe that this has always been this way,
Mm-hmm.
if we've always been like this, if it's always been about conflict and war, and we've always been killing each other, then it's no biggie. It's just same old, same old. And when you look around the world today, we are still that. We are still that. Most people just want to be left alone to live their lives in peace. Most people are happy to get along with their neighbour.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are good-hearted and gentle and loving and kind. They're not interested in trying to overcome anybody or beat anybody or any of that stuff. This whole idea that competition and warmongering is human nature is a lie. I know it's a lie. You know it's a lie. I know most of the people in this room know it's a lie. It's not who we are. And we've been sold a friggin' false bill of goods on what is human nature and what is our history. We can connect the way that we all have virtually. And and have a great deal of affection and love and empathy and all of these things for people we've never met in the flesh. That's who we are, you know. And I think we've been under this now, just even for the last 100 years, to the point where it's creating that in us, because we've all been so hurt and damaged, and people have lived under the most incredibly heartbreaking conditions, that we are creating people who want vengeance, who
That's true.
feel racism, who
Programmed, though. They're being programmed to it.
they're being programmed, but they're also experiencing complete aggression.
Well, I mean, just take, Iraq and the rest of that area and what we as Americans have done. There are very few adults left, and, of the children that are going to grow up, all they know is that story. Of course they're going to hate Americans because we did that to them, and so that will be their conditioning for their lives. And although hopefully many of them will overcome and, grow beyond, but many of them will just have so much disaster in their lives that they'll be blinded. They won't be able to see past all that contrast. And we did it. We created it. And I'm ashamed sometimes to call myself American, because our government and all of the people in seats of control have destroyed humans without concern. They're doing it for money and for power and for all these other reasons. And the people of America are not doing it, but the people in command are. But the people over there who are living in rubble every day, scourging just for water, for the basics, they don't know the difference between me sitting here and the President of the United States as far as who caused it. They just know they're sitting in rubble, and they didn't do it. And their parents had a different life, and their parents before them had a different life. And yet we came in and we destroyed it. So in a way, we are creating a generation in many parts of the world. America is doing it, of course, in combination with, England and a couple of other places.
Yeah,
but I think we're the lead, and I think we have a lot to answer for. We're creating an entire generation of people who are going to go up and want retaliation and be angry.
It just so happens that America is the military arm of this control system. It's like, just as the UK is, or London, the city of London is the financial, and Australia is just anybody's lapdog. It does what it's told. But it isn't, I know it's not who we are, and we are creating some seriously traumatized people. And there are children, like you say, who have never known anything else. There are young adults who have never known anything else but war, but poverty, but loss. And
we can, I think, change it in a generation too.
We can. It's been done
and let me
quickly. It can be undone.
Let me share something that I've been thinking of just the last couple of days. When I was growing up, my parents, who both grew up during the Depression, were pretty insistent on my going to college to make sure that no matter what, I would always be able to take care of myself. Whether I got married or didn't get married, that I wasn't dependent upon a man, but that I would always be able to take care of myself. And that I should probably get a government job, because that's what they both had. My father worked for the IRS, and my mother mostly worked for the IRS and the post office. So they knew the benefits that you would get, the health benefits, the retirement benefits. And if not the government, then a solid, well-founded corporation, because you would then be able to, have a retirement plan and all that kind of stuff. And of course, I didn't follow that because that's just not me. And I got a lot of flack for many years. As a matter of fact, I changed jobs every 2.5, 3 years, because in my field, in the legal field, that's how you get ahead. And if you're not trying to get ahead, they just kick you out anyway because they can bring in somebody cheaper to do what they think is the same job. But in my case, I just got lucky and I just kept getting better and better jobs. But take that thought process for my parents' generation and what they felt was necessary to live a happy and productive life, safe life, secure life. But in my generation, and even moving more towards my sons, it doesn't work like that anymore. And in my son's generation, it's even completely different than mine because of all the technology, which creates a whole different realm of jobs that, and also gets rid of a lot of jobs that were the bread and butter jobs of yesterday. So the generation after that will be different, and the one after that will be different. So we each live within these parameters of what we grow up with and what we experience. But that doesn't mean that the next generation will have to comply or will even be able to live that lifestyle, because it may not even exist. So in the same way that we're creating these catastrophes, if we focus on its opposite in the realm of levity, then we can change in just a generation all the damage that we've done by literally finding a different way to live in this reality or change the reality. At least that's my view.
Yeah, I mean, in your mum's generation, it would have been, you know, you leave school, you leave college, whatever, you get a job, one job. Everyone had a job for life almost. You know, you got a job with one company and that's where you stayed until you retired. It's just so not like that anymore. And how many people now can just be entrepreneurs from home? I mean, that was unthought of even 20 years ago. Yeah. So, and kids are starting their own businesses from home while they're still at school. Yeah, because you can do it all online, and then it's completely different. So who knows where we're going? I'll just read some of the messages in the chat room. It seems to me that it would have been taken out to eliminate from awareness at the mass level of distinct possibilities available to humankind in terms of awareness. If there is only gravity, then it is like saying there is only low vibration available and possible. Yeah. What else? Multidimensional.
Yeah, Lee's in there talking about how his grandfather raised 8 kids during the Depression. My father's mother alone raised, well, they had 9 kids, but 2 of them died because they had a lot of diseases back then and people weren't able to live through them the way they are today. Alone, she washed clothes and cleaned people's houses to raise her children. So it was, you know, times were tough. My dad used to love to cook. So he would cook something, and if it didn't work out, he would have to run at least a block away and put it in somebody else's garbage because he wouldn't be able to tell his mother that he wasted those resources. That's how bad it was.
Someone mentioned carbon dating. And yeah, there's a lot to suggest that carbon dating is not what it appears to be either. Because there are external forces that accelerate or slow down the rate of decay of carbon too. And unless you would know exactly what they are and when they occurred and for how long, then you can't accommodate for them. So it's not only that, but the results have been deliberately manipulated. So the idea is to put this idyllic history of ours so far back into our past that we can't relate to it. It feels so far gone, you know. And if the Egyptian era happened only a couple of 100 years ago, that does something to you. You know, when you feel like these things were just actually just kind of yesterday-ish, you know, and not
Well,
long.
let me throw this out there.
Ancient time.
Ancient past, yeah. Sorry, Barbara?
Yeah, let me throw this out there because while you were talking, I was thinking of it in terms of when people follow their genealogy. And if you get a hook into England, for example, or the UK, you can follow your family's line hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, you know, in the past through birth certificates, marriage certificates, and death certificates primarily. But since you just brought up Egypt, because I have family in Egypt, I know from what they tell me that they can trace their history several thousand years back. Because the way that they name their children, even women, for example, my ex-husband's name is Behet Eldin Gamel Yusuf El Semen. When he chopped off El Semen when he came to America because it wouldn't fit on the passport. Technically, that's what his name was supposed to be. So when he had a child, they would take off the El Semen, they would add a name to the front, and then that would be the child's name. And Sam, we didn't have Sam follow that exactly, but his name is Samir Behet Eldin Gamel Yusuf. So if he had a child, they would chop off the Yusuf, and the last name would be Gamel. And that's how they follow their lineage. Even with women don't take their husband's names. Which would be my mother-in-law, her name is Entazar Zid, even though she married Joseph or Yusuf El Semen. So that's how they follow their lineage, by literally keeping the names, but just taking off one and adding to the end and doing that generation after generation. So your children don't even have the same last name as you do. So they can go backward in time, you know, much more easily because of that. And I know that my ex-husband's family is able to trace his lineage several thousand years using that method. So if they can do that, though, how would you explain that? Or people who follow their lineage, say, on this part of the planet, and then can follow those records that were kept for thousands of years in a place such as England? That's the only thing that I can't quite figure out.
Oh, that to me doesn't change anything, because it's not like we've only been here for a couple of hundred years. We've been here for a long time. But what we're told the civilizations are and looked like, and the time frames. So I could trace my lineage back 1,000 years, but it could be that only 300 years ago they were living in Egypt and they're highly cultured, highly civilized. But I don't know that, right? Unless I've got their unless I've got their diaries of what their day-to-day life was like. I don't know, but I could still, and the fact that they can trace the records going back that far means that there was a culture that allowed for that to start with, right? So you're not actually at the peak of it now. There's been a culture that has allowed for the written language and the history to write down these names and record and do all that for thousands of years. Do you know what I mean?
Got it. I do. I totally get it. And that now it makes sense, because you're not talking existence, you're talking culture and history, what we're taught as far as history goes.
Yep. And
well, let me throw this. Let's go forward then, because this also ties into what you were saying yesterday. Remember when you were talking about the cloud just briefly yesterday on the One People show?
About the what? Oh, the cloud.
Yeah, and you said, I wouldn't put anything up there. Do you remember that?
Yeah, not only up there.
Okay.
Like, I'd have a hard copy somewhere.
I got that. But see, let me tell you what my view is. And this is like taking what you're saying, but shooting it towards the future as opposed to looking at the past. I actually love the cloud for a completely different reason. I put everything up there, and it's mostly because I'm, as an artist, as a creative person, I have short stories and poems and photos and and animations that I made in the 80s and 90s, and stuff that's my whole history. I'm throwing it up there and forgetting about it. Just forgetting about it. I have some data dumps that have been up there since the 90s, before they actually called it a cloud, on something called Errls.com. Because I don't care if I can find it again, if I lose my passwords, because I know that it'll get picked up by the NSA, for example, or whoever is, keeping everything, and it will exist in some form. So I am hoping that purely by just maybe not so much my personal messages and stuff, but anything that's creative, I'm just shoving it up there, because some of it may make it, 100 years, 1,000 years, and somebody will find it, and it won't, it'll just exist for them. So that's why I actually love the cloud, and I love that the NSA thinks they're so sneaky and pulling the shit. I'm using exactly what they think they're using against me for my benefit and for the benefit of the future, by chucking it full of creativity. Ta-da!
Nice. It's like a little time capsule you're filling up.
Yeah, exactly. What if the only thing that existed in 10,000 years is all this shit that they find of mine up there? I will become the culture. Oh, Lordy, Lordy.
They'll be rewriting it. This deity that lived in the cloud. That'll be the Barbara.
Which brings us back to levity.
There's a lot of comments. I'm a bit slow on that. I'm
Are you frozen?
Oh,
okay.
No, am I? No. What are you looking at?
I'm fucking losing my
Your video's frozen, but your audio is okay.
I will stop the video and start it again. How's that? Any better? Am I moving?
I don't see it yet.
No, you might just end up with
See
your
you. I hear you. No, there's no picture, just a voice.
Yeah, my video's not working.
Just a voice. Now I see a placeholder.
The little green light on my camera is on.
There we go.
You got me?
Yeah, sort of. It's. I'll take what I can get.
No! I'm stuck in a time warp, says Lee. Okay.
spectacular.
No. So, I want to throw it out there. If we were going to do a collective doing today that revolved around levity, what would that look like? I'd love to hear your ideas.
If you threw an apple into levity,
Oh, is that what
That's
it
if you-
sounded like?
yeah. What did you
Oh,
say?
The internet's doing strange things.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's me. I'm
Dee's
sorry.
hogging the internet.
I'm sorry.
And since you were talking about, levity and gravity,
Documents on the script. It's my fault.
what's that?
Guys.
Dee seems to have forgotten that we're doing a show and decided to start uploading documents.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
So she's apologising profusely as she shuts it down. She's,
Never mind.
see this fly
Fine.
squatter? You could use this to whip yourself.
now that could be fun. So you didn't say throw an apple into levity.
I did not say that. No.
I'm lecture the children on. Don't use it.
It's just giving the kids all a hard time. Don't use the internet. She comes out and uploads documents. I know what I said was, if we were to do our collective doing today around the concept of levity, what would that look like for you guys? How does that feel?
Well, if it's the opposite, if it's gravity, it would be more of a ground if it's light. But
Oh no, you just went all robo on me.
Oh.
You back? I can see you.
I'm afraid to talk.
No, you're back. You're back. Okay, Sheila said, I just feel expansion when I feel into it.
Would we use it for personal too, or send out and
Oh, we're not having any luck right now, are we? Is it at my end, guys, or is it at Barbara's? Because to me, she's frozen now.
Actually, at my end better, we got a new router and really pumped up our power, so I should be good to go here.
Barbara's fine. It's at my end. Okay. Yes, Jed, come on out. Jed, you're unmuted.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. Good.
No, I didn't particularly have anything to share, but a few things came up from just in chat and when you're talking. Oh, it's a bit red anyway. So a couple of things I wanted to share that came to mind was one that, to me, timelines, a darker timeline or one with more gravity is darker or heavier, moves slower, and the higher the frequency, the faster time moves, which is, I think, why time is speeding up as the awakening process is happening. So different timelines run differently. So maybe in the darker timeline, they kind of took us into where I think they did, the Library of Alexandria and lots of others got burnt. They took the knowledge out. They wanted and destroyed lots of others. Maybe in that timeline, there was an extra 1,000 years. I'm not saying there was, but I'm just saying maybe it was longer than in the other more positive timeline. So that was one thing. The other point with that was somebody said they traced their family records back to the 1600s. And I was like, mine too. Well, I didn't do it. Someone else did it. But somewhere in the 1600s, that little church in Somerset was burnt and all the records were destroyed. And something just made me think, gee, I wonder how many other churches happen to get burnt and have the records destroyed right at that same period. So that would be worth checking out with different people and correlating. And the other thought that really popped in my head to share now is when you're asking, to me, I think gravity is contraction and a darker thing, and levity is expansion and lighter. And what came to mind was Heyoka's sacred clowns, and how a lot of them in traditionally Native American, they do things backwards. They wash with dirt and dry themselves with water, and they ride backwards on their horses. Not all Heyokas, but in some traditions. But essentially, they were the sacred clowns. And so to me, I thought they were very honored. They were very, very respected and honored. And I thought, yeah, because they were the ones that I think embodied levity. So that's just a few things that really strongly came to mind to share. So thanks, guys.
You said clowns?
Yeah, sacred clowns. Heyokas.
I've never heard of that. What's that?
Well, in Native American tradition, though, Heyokas, or in some tribes, but even in general, when Robin Williams died, so many people seemed to be affected by that he touched a lot of people. And I actually wrote a passage on that, and I said, because I was tuning into it, and I felt that essentially what I wrote was that I felt that he was a sacred clown, that even clowns in circuses. One of my girlfriends once said to me that I would make an awesome clown, and I was very honored because I knew that exactly what she meant. I knew she meant the true meaning of clowns, that to be a true clown, you have to be, I guess, very empathic. You have to be able to really feel the depth of sorrow and compassion and empathize with others, and then actually transmute that into laughter, into love. So and that's what I wrote. I think that Robin Williams was one of those kind of people, what I essentially call a sacred clown. And that's why it touched and affected so many people, because they're the ones that in many ways pay the price, the sacrifice of transmuting the collective pain and sorrow and shadow and turning it into laughter and getting us to see the lighter side of things. Literally the lighter side, the more levitous side, to me, is levity is light. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to share on that, because I think that there's something to that. And you know, for me, I think one of my greatest saviors in my life, in my path, is the ability to, is humor, and particularly the ability to laugh at myself. I think, you know, literally to lighten up, literally to be able to see the funny side of things and not take myself so seriously, because your ego persona, it's perfect as it is, but it's also, it's essentially, I think of as contracted being. It's a very limited version of yourself, and it always takes itself seriously. But your higher self, your spirit, is so much more than that. It's so much more multidimensional and so much more expansive than that. And it's always light. I mean, literally, it's light. It's made of light, and it's literally much lighter. And so in a sense, in one way, you could say our ego persona is the gravitas or the gravity, and our higher self or spirit self or soul is, well, I think the soul is a bridge between the two, between sort of ego persona and spirit. But that is our literally our light self, our light being, our lighter self. And to me, one of the most common things you can see with those that to me are the real deal, are really awake and realized beings, is not only their compassion but their humor. So in a sense, they're all kind of sacred clowns in a sense. Anyway, that's just what came to me. So thanks for letting me share, guys.
Yeah, I was hoping Sheila would come out, because she was talking in chat about hearing exactly what you've just said about sacred clowns, but not in relation to Robin Williams. Sheila, would you be comfortable coming out and sharing that?
I'll try. It's kind of weird. It's kind of odd, because someone from our group actually said, I've never heard the term before, and someone from the Campfire group, the Healing Space Tribe group, said to me that they thought I was a Heyoka empath, and I'd never heard that term before. And so I had to go and look that up. And I, to some degree, saw myself in that. And I had a bit of a odd feeling behind that. So I know what he's talking about, helping transmuting the collective, not pain, maybe for some, maybe pain, but being able to try to look at yourself in that. Apparently, I'm still not, I'll be honest with you, I'm still not real comfortable with the whole explanation, but I am exploring it. And it's odd to feel like you're, in some cases, a mirror. I know everybody hates that term about a mirror, but it's like, it's not in a mirror in that I'm reflecting back to you. It's that people, for some reason, feel comfortable putting their projections out. And a Heyoka empath can feel that projection out. And sometimes that's what I'm giving. Amber, I'm so glad you're here. I hope Amber is the one that will come out and talk to you about this, Barbara, because Amber, I hope she doesn't mind my saying so, but Amber is the one that told me about a Heyoka empath, and I was grateful for that. I've never heard the term, and so I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have said that, but that's what I heard it, and I love that part, and I think it's awesome, and I'm still exploring that.
Amber, are you comfortable coming out and sharing your thoughts about the Heyoka?
I'm going to stay muted because I've got some serious machinery in the background, but also Christine's unmuted too. She may want to come out, or if not, just mute yourself, Dom.
Amber says okay, so let's start with Amber, if that's okay. It is your show, Lisa. How do you feel about that?
It's absolutely fine with me, and it's our show, so stop that. And by that I mean
Okay.
everybody here.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, many years back, I was doing a lot of sweat lodges in with a Lakota man. And I'm shaking. It's a very difficult energy to carry, and he told me that that's an energy that I carried, and I've come to understand it as everything's contrary. Sometimes, people react to me in a contrary way, in the sense that whatever energy they're feeling when they're around me, it will cause for them to experience that deep shadow within. And it's not all the time, it's just that that's part of the way it manifests. And being an empath on top of that, it's like I'll sense exactly where they're at. And I've learned to zip my mouth. And when I didn't zip my mouth, it was like just really difficult to be around people. And that's why I have become so hermit-like. I mean, I've lived on my own since the early 90s by myself with my dogs and now my horse. Anyway, empath is about, or the Hayoka energy is always, it's like if you're carrying this, people are easily reacting to you all the time. And they don't understand, and I didn't understand. It's like it's just that deep shadow energy that's how I'm understanding it now, gets felt inside you. And
Is there a benefit to the person whose energy you're feeling when that energy is allowed to be seen by you or felt by you?
Definitely, because then that's like, again, the mirror. But it's not that, it's just that they get to see themselves, and it's not a comfortable place to see these things about who we are. I mean, and I've had people literally, I mean, the latest person was the woman who came to stay with me when I was going through my surgery. She got up in the middle of the night and left without speaking a word. She had to run away, literally. And that's not the first time that's occurred. I mean, and oftentimes when I'm feeling, I will create, it's just like the joke just comes out, or the silliness comes out, or and I find myself being clown-like in my behavior, which is sometimes even more irritating to the person that's witnessing it. But what can you, like, it's like I've had to do a lot of work to be kind about it, to be really compassionate about it, and to not make anybody bad or wrong in my head about if they react. And it's like in the tradition, the native traditions, the Lakota, in the Lakota, this was explained to me because this man used to take me aside and try to help me and talk to me so that I would understand what was going on, because at the time I couldn't keep friends. There's been very few people that have wanted to be my friend because it's hard to be around me. So, and it's not that I am mean. It's just, people can only take so much of seeing themselves. Or
what about people who are like you or who don't carry a great amount of that energy? Do you feel energetically lifted or lightened or less burdened when you're around them? Why don't you spend more time around them?
Well, there's not very many. I've made some connections via the internet, and I have a really great connection, I feel, with a woman in Australia who is also a Heyoka empath. And we can spend a lot of time, hours chatting, and just, but it's very rare to meet somebody else. And sometimes I've experienced that that person also, if they're going down a particular, if they're living their life in a particular way, I mean, we reflect each other, right? It's like we all do that anyway, but we reflect this really powerful energy. And I've even had one guy recently run away because he couldn't handle it. He couldn't handle just a simple word of truth. And that was just an internet connection. So,
well, if I could be so bold, we talk on this show about this a lot, and it's something that I have incorporated into just my everyday beingness, that I for lack of another way to describe it, I'll go into a state of meditation or just contemplation, anywhere from a few moments, a few seconds to, minutes, 30 minutes, anything in between. Doing dishes, I can even do it, where I send out that I basically bring myself to square, then open up so that all I can feel is like this joy and this wonderful feeling. And I feel it, for me, it comes from here, but I'm here, but I know it's different for everybody. And once I do that, then I find that that's what I attract back. So I'm just curious, did you ever put like a conscious effort into lifting your own energy frequencies for the sole purpose of letting people go who are not serving you and attracting people who would better, infuse you with some of the same, positive energy that you've got? I'm just curious.
I've had a very good, very strong learning curve this past year with having invited 4 other people to come at various times to come and stay here. And I've learned that it's really okay to say, no, you got to go. And with love and compassion. And there are a few people in my life, some fellow musicians, that literally adore who I am. And so I get great enthusiasm and joy when I go out and I play music with my band members. And I can be that clown. I can be in their face. It's a pirate band. And so it's like, it's almost like a similar energy to the clown, to the Heyoka clown. I mean, we dress up, we act, we sing, and I've found my voice in that. So yes, I really have seen the difference in how those that really know me and love me for who I am take it. And I can, it's like they're all guys. So it's like, And young, much younger than me. I mean, I'm grandma. And it's a beautiful, if it's a beautiful relationship with them. And yet it's, you know, it's hard having somebody live in my own space with me. So I've just learned that that's not going to happen. I'm not going to do that anymore. And if my land, I have 4 acres of land here, I would love to have other people around, but in their own space and a little cabin or trailer or whatever, you know, teardrop. And it's just really, I mean, I'm learning to really honor who I am for myself. And I make faces at myself in the mirror, you know, and I dance around here like a silly clown. And that's just me entertaining me and enjoying me and falling in love with me. And I think that's one of the ways that if you were to grow up in a culture like the Native American, and you would be recognized by the tribe people, the council of elders or whoever, they would be able to recognize this. And then that child is nurtured to just be themselves, and usually trained as a shaman, usually trained to be that sacred clown within the community, and honored and used to, like, okay, somebody's upset, you go over and stand on your head, or you whatever in front of them, you know, you do something to change the mood, change the feelings, lighten it up, put some levity in there, and it's wonderful. And they're anti-gravity, they really are. I mean, it's like they're the perfect example of that. So it's been a real heavy learning curve for me through my all my life to figure out who I am. So I don't think I need to say anything more.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And everyone in the chat, Joseph and Teresa and Sheila, they're all saying the same thing. That thank you for sharing, and what a wonderful story. And I see where Jed's talking about Robin Williams, because you know, every second he had, he was changing the mood, lifting it up. Before you could even get your breath, he was changing it again, lifting it higher.
I feel that he very much carried Heyoka. He very much did. And it is within me always a dance of awareness about not to go down the negative spiral. You know, depression sits right there. And I've had enough practice in my life through all the sweat lodges and all the living with meditative, you know, meditation has been a thing in my life, although I've never really enjoyed meditation. I've never really been able to do it like they say you're supposed to. But so I meditate by doing the dishes, or sweeping the floor, or mucking out the horse stall, you know, and really finding the humor even when the rake breaks.
Can I just say something for a second? Because when
Yeah.
Jen brought this up, I immediately went to a memory of my first time at the circus. And I think I was about 10. And I guess I've been an observer for as long as I can remember. Because I remembered being there, and the clowns were the ones who got my attention. And I noticed what they were doing, because it was always after some activity that created the most tension. The person up on the high wire, or some kind of people juggling act, or something where the tension in the tent built. So for those people who really went on the ride of being in the circus, and really got themselves caught up in that energy, and really allowed themselves to feel the danger and and the tension and everything, the tension would build up. That's when the clowns would come out. And they would allow people to just release all of that tension through laughter, and then everybody would come back down again. And we went on this emotional ride with them. that they controlled, really, by the way they popped in and popped out. And the other thing I noticed about them was the people that they could see who weren't going along for the ride. You know, the dad who's sitting there in the background, just he's taking his kids there and his kids are having a ball, but, you know, he's not buying any of it. You know, that's the guy that they would spot and deliberately try and get to laugh. You know, they pick on them. I saw them do this to like half a dozen people in this crowd in the circus tent. The ones who weren't participating, the ones who weren't allowing themselves to let go, the ones who weren't going for the ride, they would push them until they broke, until they laughed, until they joined in. But their primary role was giving us an opportunity to release all of that tension that got built up. And it was such a roller coaster. When you walked out of there, I remember as kids, we walked out of there, got in the car, and we were asleep in the car within minutes because the emotional roller coaster was exhausting, and it didn't matter how much fairy floss or crap we ate. It was like we were out. And listening to you talk, it's like that sort of just kept bringing back clearer and clearer memories of that experience. So I totally see what you're saying.
You know what's interesting about what you're saying, Lisa, is, well, first off, I never made that connection. That, you know, something that was daring happened and then the clowns would come out. But it makes perfect sense. And what I like about it is that clearly people can relate to it in a 3D way because they, as you did, you saw that there was tension and then the clowns would come up to release it. But think of it energetically. The tension rises, and then energetically, the equivalent of a clown comes in and releases it. So apply that same principle to any point of contrast where you've got some contrast that's rising up a frequency or a level that is, you know, feeling some way that you wish it to feel differently. You bring in a different level of energy to counterbalance it and bring it back down. And that's like a principle that could be applied to anything, anywhere, anytime, to always bring us back to wherever we want to be. Wow, I got like a lot out of that. Thank you.
I'm just reading what's going on in the chat room again. Too much levity equals what we used to call a space cadet. Too much gravity is worse than just depressing. We find ourselves bringing situations closer and closer to a form of 0 point. And Jim Carrey being a clown too, yes. Gravity and levity, yeah. I mean, if they're in perfect balance, then you kind of don't have to get pulled one way or the other to bring the other one in. You can just kind of stay in that 0 point. But again, I want some ideas about how we can play with this in our collective doing today. Because in a way, every time we come together and we expand, we're playing with levity, I would imagine.
Well, I would like to find out from the people in chat if they prefer the doing to be relating levity to something for us personally as individuals, or using levity in some kind of a way to, in a collective way, to counterbalance something else that is more gravity than levity.
Jed's
For
got his hand
personal
up
or
again too.
Okay.
Jed, come on out.
Just because I think it's relevant. I didn't feel very galactivated today, and I wasn't planning on, coming on and saying anything. But I'll read this because I found that post, and this probably had the most reaction of any post I've ever done, and it was shared all over the place. And so I thought I'd read it because I think it really is relevant to what we're all talking about. So this was what came to me about a few days after Robin Williams' death, and I saw all the reactions. So this says, on Robin Williams, my former girlfriend once said to me that I could be a great clown, and I was very honoured because I knew exactly what she meant, that a true clown has the ability to express a deep and profound sadness as well as laughter. That, to my mind at least, one must be a deeply empathic and compassionate being to be a true clown. In so many cultures, not least a great number of Native American cultures, the clown was a greatly honored and highly respected member of the tribe, and that it took a special soul to be a clown. They have the ability to take on and transform extreme emotions, particularly grief, into laughter, tears into joy, and to express not always easily expressed truths. In medieval times, a wise king was one that would listen to his fool as much as his wise advisors. In fact, it was the job of the fool to express truth, even painfully honest ones, like exposing the ruler's own flaws and failings to them, and to remind them that they too were human, to keep them in touch with those they would rule. Anyway, I have always seen Robin Williams as playing this classic sacred role. To put it simply, though it is far from simple, the clown takes on much of the suffering and pain of others and transforms it so that it is a little easier for the rest of us. The huge reaction and the type of comments and sentiment I see being expressed over Robin Williams' passing seems to confirm this to me. The clown, in many ways, plays a part of sacrifice for the rest of us, and it takes a great and hugely compassionate, if not deeply troubled, soul to do this. Even in his death, he is teaching us something. Maybe that we all must take on something of his role individually and collectively at this place and time of the Earth's transformation. Just my 2 cents worth.
You know, Robin Williams really personified the sad clown for me. That, what you just said, that he was someone who suffered greatly from depression, and that almost in uplifting everybody, he took on everybody's sadness in order to do that. And that's a huge weight to carry.
Yeah, and the reason I really prompted to share was just the last bit, because, you know, I haven't read this. I wrote this 18 months ago or something, was, you know, where it said that maybe we all must take on something of his role individually and collectively at this place and time. And that's what really prompted me to read it, because I sort of hearing my own words back, I was like, oh, that's interesting. So again, thank you for letting me share. I hope that was worth something to think.
Hey, Jen, I think that might be our doing then, because of what you just said at the end. Can you repeat that part?
Well, actually,
Yeah.
because of the noise in my background, I was going to say I'm not really in a position to run the meditation today. So if Jed or somebody else would like to, it's probably a good idea, because otherwise it's going to be like this.
I don't have any particular feeling to run one, but if somebody else in the group, I think pretty much anybody in this group is quite capable of running a good one. But I'll just read that last part again, as Barb asked. Even in his death, he is teaching us something. Maybe that we all must take on something of his role, individually and collectively at this place and time of the Earth's transformation. So I found that interesting now after Levity, that yes, that maybe I think a lot of us do carry that, or some of it to some degree, but yeah, maybe we all need to look at Levity, to bring Levity in. And that's what we're doing, is as an expansion and raising the awareness. So anyway, that was interesting.
So what I got from that was bringing in levity because if each one of us does our part to bring in, to diffuse a little bit of gravity, for lack of another word, with levity, then just as Robin Williams did, we're able to, just chip away a little bit at all of those negative things and kind of release them out, so that people can then be a little freer to, live in a more calm and grounded spot. So,
well, the noises stopped, so I could guide that now.
Okay.
That's all right.
How does that sound to everybody?
Okay, so the visual I just got was that once we're together in our little blue bubble that we've already created, that if we see the planet in whatever way, shape or form that looks to you, and we see a field, a force field, you could say, that sits over it, that represents gravity, that's dense and holding everything down and pulling it in, that we see this field of levity sort of come from behind us somewhere and you can see it, and allow the two to meet and see what happens where they meet, and invite everybody up into that space. That's just the visual I saw.
Yeah, because to me it's the same as the clowns you were describing. So when we're seeing the levity coming from around to meet with the gravity, it's the same as the clowns coming in to diffuse the tension of something else, or Robin Williams coming in with his comedy to, you know, lift up the people who were in a depression, even if it's only for, you know, the moment that he's on screen or whatever, that kind of thing. So you're talking about it in purest terms of levity and gravity, but anyone can visualize it in any way that makes sense to them in terms of, you know, positive, negative, you know, contrast and, you know, clarity, however you want to see it.
Okay. I'm going to disappear to the bathroom before we do this.
Okay, well, I have something I can say while you're gone.
Okay. I'll be some seconds.
You don't have to tell us how long.
I won't be long.
You really want to know how long she's going to be in the bathroom. Sheila, you mentioned the campfire when you were talking about clowns and the clown energy and the Native Americans and such. And someone from the campfire group had mentioned this. And that struck me because earlier today I took a short break at lunchtime and I was watching a movie called The Way. I just stepped into it when it was already started. It's with Martin Sheen, and it's a story about his real son, Emilio Estevez, I think directed this, but he dies in the movie. He was going to do the Camino. So instead, Martin Sheen does it for his now departed son. And the Camino is a long trek that you go through. I think it's called Camino de Santiago. I think it's in Spain. Shirley MacLaine did it, and lots of people do it. But while he was on it, he ran into a group of gypsies, and they had a campfire in this movie. And the minute they showed the campfire, I thought about the campfire group because it was people dancing, and the point of that was to lift up the energy at that moment using the campfire as kind of a common area for a experience or a party to take place around it. And while I was watching that, and they were on the Camino, I realized that, and I'm making a big leap, but you just reminded me of it, Sheila, with talking about the campfire group, that my train trek, the translation tour, is my Camino. I'm going to be on 9 days, and it's on a train, but it's a Camino nonetheless, and it's a moment in time of 9 days of pure contemplation, where hopefully I'll run into other people, whether they're native to being on the train anyway, or they come along for the ride, or I meet them in Chicago during my layover, or in San Francisco while I'm there and do meetups. It's still a Camino nonetheless, and a Camino that I'm willing to share in a campfire kind of setting with everyone else. So it was really wonderful for me to have that kind of recognition while I was watching that little short piece of film during lunch, and then for Sheila to bring it up, because to me, it also goes into this levity thing, because I'll be at zero. I won't be high, I won't be low. I'll just be contemplative. Ah. Okay, so time for the doing.
Time for the doing. I'm quite excited about this little trip of yours, to be honest.
Me too. Really excited.
And we have to organise a time for me to join you virtually.
Definitely, because I would love to be able to do a couple of things recorded, like literally, so you can see, like, you know, things moving behind me and everything like that, and just popping them up there, you know, little moments in time that I can share, say, with you, Lisa, and, you know, they only have to be a few minutes, and just pop them up.
Cool. I'm going to share screen and turn off my video. Okay.